I'm Laura Ashworth, 31 years young. My folks just dropped a bombshell. Shell out for my sister's big day or get booted from their world for good. That's right, no exaggeration. They laid down the law right smack in the middle of Sunday supper, at my kitchen table, in the home I've been footing the bill for while they've crashed here the past 3 years. Madison perched there with her trademark smirk, the same one she's flashed since we were kids whenever she scored something I missed out on. That grin that screams, "No big deal, I came out on top once more." But hold up. Let me backtrack and explain the mess that led us here. My parents crashed at my place 3 years back when Dad, Mr. Ashworth, got canned from his fancy accounting gig downtown. They swore it'd be short term. Yeah, short term like a root canal, huh? They showed up with a couple of bags and somehow turned my living room upside down with their dusty old stuff. Mom, Mrs. Ashworth, dove straight into reorganizing my kitchen shelves, insisting it was all about better organization. Sweetie, Dad claimed the home office for his job hunt, which mostly meant binging golf videos on YouTube from dawn till dusk. Just so you know, by 31, I'd been grinding at jobs since 16. I scraped together college cash through scholarships and 3 side hustles. I wrapped up law school at 25 buried under loans, then hustled the next 6 years to launch my own firm. When they promoted me to senior associate 2 years ago, I figured stability was finally in reach. Nope. The warning signs kicked off when they handed over my master bedroom to Madison. My master bedroom, folks. She required extra room for her clutter, Mom justified, as I stood frozen with my laundry in hand. I got demoted to the old guest spot, crashing on a single bed meant for out-of-town pals. But come on, I'm a lawyer. I adapt, don't I? Fat chance. Costs skyrocketed from day one. My power bill shot up threefold thanks to the constant 70 degrees Celsius chill they demanded. Food expenses went through the roof once Dad got hooked on all organic eats, and Mom fancied herself a pro cook. When I mentioned the added strain, she squeezed my hand and cooed, "Sweetie, kin looks after kin. You get it." Oh, I got it all right. I was bankrolling their golden years while they bossed me around like staff in my space. Madison would abandon her grimy outfits in the washer for days till they stank, then gripe if I shifted them. Dad borrowed my ride sans permission, dumping it back empty on gas with weird spots on the upholstery. I'd suggest simple household guidelines, and they'd swap those glances. The kind implying, "Aw, Fragile Laura's stirring trouble once more." The tension had simmered for ages. Stepping inside my own pad felt like intruding. Like all my sweat, my achievements, my world now served others. But that ultimatum evening, I realized the charade had to end. I rose from the table cool as ice, inhaling deeply, like prepping for a courtroom showdown. My parents' jaws dropped, stunned that pushback was happening at last. Madison kept up her goofy beam, treating it like playtime. "Listen," I stated, voice even, no shouting. "If this is your idea of family, count me out. I'm vanishing. I'm 31, hustled from 16, covered my tuition, slogged through law school in debt, carved my path while you squatted rent-free in my house for 3 years, and now you demand I fund Madison's wedding or you're done with me. Newsflash. I don't require your okay to chase my dreams anymore." Dad's jaw worked, but nothing escaped. Mom scowled, and Madison's eyes flickered, her cozy dominance cracking at last. I laid it all bare. The luxuries I'd covered, the car joyrides, the perks my siblings savored from my grind, the utilities I'd settled, the fancy meals nobody voted for, every concession for their ease. "Enough," I declared. "My world, my toil, my cash, stay with me. Grab what suits you. But this nonsense stops now. Clear out in 24 hours. I've endured. I've played nice. I've aimed for ideal daughter status. But that's done." Dead quiet fell. No shouts, no retorts, just the clock's steady tick as relief washed over me like a storm breaking. Madison's smirk faded. Maybe, just maybe, she grasped that wins don't always come from scheming or crocodile tears. That evening, I hit the hay in my own quarters, sensing true ownership for the first time in forever. Come morning, eyes open, I sensed a fresh start ahead, that my days could reshape entirely, that I could build. I drew firm lines around my personal space and protected my sense of calm. Even though I couldn't predict my parents' next move or how Madison might respond, a profound shift had occurred within me, one that was irreversible. No more playing the role of the sufferer, no longer confined. I refused to let them own me anymore. With each bill I settled, I watched the costs skyrocket while my own savings dwindled away unnoticed. Whenever folks referred to our home when they meant my place, it grated on me. I'd been raised to prioritize family above all, to believe that thriving individuals lifted up those around them, and that challenging the household setup labeled you as self-centered. The breaking point hit last month when I learned they'd been spreading lies that I was struggling financially and they'd stepped in to rescue me. Rescue me, of all things. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, gushed about how touching it was that my folks were backing me through tough patches. I nearly sputtered on my coffee that morning. "Pardon me, come again," I managed, forcing composure. I eased into a chair, placing my utensil down deliberately, my legal instincts firing on all cylinders. Inhale deeply, keep your cool, collect the details, hold back until it's time to act. "Regarding the nuptials," Mom continued, ladling extra spuds onto her dish like she hadn't just proposed I bankroll my siblings' dream event. "We figured $28,000 ought to handle it all, the location, the blooms, the gown, the shutterbug." Madison had zeroed in on the loveliest venue in Napa Valley. Napa Valley, naturally, since anything nearby would have been too pedestrian for Her Highness Madison. I glanced her way, watching her inspect her polished nails, as though her bliss hinged on them, all while I perched at my own dining spot, baffled at how I'd ended up here. "That's quite the sum," I noted cautiously. "It's putting resources into the clan," Dad shot back, echoing the very pitch that got me to agree to their short-term stay 3 years back. "Madison deserves a proper send-off just once," they insisted. In truth, this marked her second shot at the altar. The prior one fizzled because her beau lacked drive. But who's keeping score? Not my parents, who drained my education stash for Madison's jaunt across Europe as I juggled 3 gigs to cover my schooling. For weeks, a nagging intuition had built up. Our family setup felt deeply flawed at its core. It began subtly, spotting how chats always centered on Madison's wants, how my wins got a quick pat on the back before circling back to her newest crisis. I'd been in counseling for 6 months now, at last facing decades of sidelining my own priorities for others. What if Madison and Tyler Dixon footed their ceremony themselves? I suggested mildly, aiming for logic. You know, the way typical grown-ups handle it. The air chilled by 20 degrees. Mom's grin turned into that fake, rigid expression like on store dummies. "Laura, that's just greedy," she snapped. And just like that, right in my living room, at my own spread, getting called out for demanding equity and reason as if it were an offense. Every phrase I uttered bounced off a barrier of denial and presumption. That's when it dawned on me, crystal clear. I wouldn't tolerate this treatment moving forward. I drew in air, reining in the fury to avoid slipping. Meeting my parents' gazes head-on, I sensed command in the exchange for the first time in ages. "Greedy," I echoed deliberately, letting it hang in the air. Do you grasp what greed really means? Pouring my sweat-earned cash into someone else's fantasies while shaming me for claiming what's fair. Now that's greed. Dad parted his lips but stayed mute. Mom scowled, and Madison at last quit toying with her cuticles. Her charm offensive had lost its grip, she saw. The strain thickened, yet rather than yield, I held my ground stronger, each statement landing like a strike against the wrongs I'd borne for so long. Time to set the record straight, I pressed on. My tone stayed even, laced with a sharpness they couldn't dismiss. "I'm not funding your ceremony. I'm done subsidizing your caprices with my funds. You've crashed here 3 years without a thought for my comfort, my finances, or my boundaries. No more." My mom started to chime in, but I cut her off with a raised hand. Hold on, let me wrap this up. It's not centered on you or Madison. This is my stand. I earn it. I strive. I constructed this home, my profession, my world, and I won't let guilt trips erode my right to safeguard it. A silence enveloped us completely. Madison even let her serviette slip from her fingers, at a loss for words. Dad shifted back in his seat, clearly uneasy. Mom stared downward, lips tight, and I sensed liberation wash over me, like gulping fresh air unburdened for the first time. If this ruling doesn't sit well, then gather your belongings and go. UH. You've got 24 hours to sort this out. This is my home, my existence, and my guidelines. No one else gets to dictate terms here, I declared steadily, ensuring each syllable hit home. My sibling parted her lips, likely gearing up for an objection, but she held back. Perhaps, at long last, she grasped that life's victories don't always stem from scheming, guilt-tripping, or crocodile tears. My folks stayed silent too, aware they couldn't compel me anymore. The facts lay bare, and this round I held the moral high ground. That evening, I drifted off peacefully, free of remorse or dread, right in my own bed, in my own quarters. After years of unease, I finally sensed true ownership over my surroundings, my schedule, and my destiny. And even though I couldn't predict my parents' next move or Madison's response come morning, a profound shift had occurred within me, irreversible. I wasn't the prey any longer. I wasn't confined. I didn't answer to them. Starting then, I realized every choice I'd make from here on would serve my own interests, not bend to their unjust demands. At last, liberty had an identity, and it was mine. Tyler had just finished law school. He carried student debt. They're only kicking off their journey together. Just beginning, huh? Tyler Dixon's mom and dad controlled nearly half the property market in San Francisco. But okay, let's act like he was some broke soul scraping by. All the while, I'd been in just starting mode for a solid 15 years, bankrolling the whole family's way of living. What happens if I can't cover it? I inquired, shifting tactics to avoid blowing up. You'll figure it out, Dad replied, slicing into his steak with excessive vigor. That's how winners operate. They pull strings for the clan. Winners? I nearly chuckled. Not long back, 3 years to be exact, this so-called winner was jobless and on the brink of foreclosure until his kid stepped in to rescue him. But hey, selective recall runs deep in our bloodline. Madison at last lifted her gaze from her manicure. It's not as if you've got other uses for your cash, she remarked, giving a nonchalant shrug paired with that smug grin that's grated on me since childhood. You're unattached. You skip vacations. You merely grind away at work non-stop. At least this puts your funds towards something worthwhile. Something worthwhile. 15 years of juggling gigs, 6 years forging my path in law, existing like a hermit solely to prop up 3 grown-ups who saw me as a cash machine. And my sibling figured my existence was devoid of purpose. My counselor, Dr. Chen, had forecasted this clash. When you begin drawing lines, she'd explained, those who've thrived on your boundary-free ways will resist fiercely. Expect guilt trips, mind games, and threats to drag things back to normal. What if I refuse? I posed, striving for composure. The ensuing quiet felt thick enough to touch. Mom and Dad swapped one of their signature glances, the kind that kicked off every major household call. Calls that oddly never factored in my say. Dad cleared his throat like he was issuing a ruling. Then you're not the child we brought up, he stated at last. Blood ties top everything, Laura. Everything. If that core idea escapes you, perhaps it's time to reassess your real priorities. And if kin matters that much? Mom chimed in, inching closer with her well-honed look of concern from over the years. You'll bend over backward to make Madison's occasion unforgettable. This is a one-shot deal. One-shot deal. Sure, much like my youth, which they devoted to drilling in my spot on the family ladder. Like my university commencement, overlooked because Madison had a racket match. And there I sat, drawing in a steadying breath, as waves of accumulated wrongdoings flashed through my mind. Each phrase, each motion, each ploy shouted that my existence wasn't theirs to claim. Yet they anticipated I'd keep yielding to their caprices, like it was routine. I inhaled deeply and rose, unleashing the burden of all those years' resentment and devotion through my words. I met my parents' stares head on, and for the first time, power rested with me. One-shot deal, I echoed, my tones soft yet resolute. Do you honestly believe it's just to demand I fund Madison's nuptials after all I've poured into this household? After 15 years of toiling relentlessly to uphold the roof, your bills, your comforts, all while you lounged at ease and acted like I was a ghost. Dad's brow furrowed, and Mom tightened her mouth, aiming to steer the conversation back, but I refused to yield. Madison started to speak, maybe to lecture me on true hardship, but I shut her down with a glare. This go-around, her barbs wouldn't stir my shame. I won't bankroll your ceremony, I pressed on. I won't keep playing the role of household dispenser. I won't tolerate my labor, my earnings, or my hours being dismissed as trivial. Every D, every dollar I'd made had poured into constructing my world and backing you all. And that's finished. A prolonged, weighty hush fell, the type that echoes more than endless chatter. Dad gazed upward at the ceiling, his breaths coming in heavy gusts, while Mom dodged my gaze. Madison for once appeared diminished and exposed, like the illusion of her flawless existence was shattering before her very eyes. If you can't grasp it, I stated, my tone even, quivering just a bit with feeling. Perhaps it's time you realize that limits matter, that existence doesn't orbit just the desires of a select few, that I too possess entitlements, aspirations, and requirements. And at last, I lowered myself back into my seat, this time chin up, devoid of dread. I sensed I'd etched a clear divide in our household dynamics. Things would never revert. They'd thrived easily on my dime for far too long, and I'd resolved it was their turn to discover they couldn't anymore claim ownership over all I possessed. That evening, as I reclined in my bed, a peculiar yet freeing feeling washed over me. Anxiety, sure, but also strength. For the first time, I truly comprehended what it signified to command my own destiny. And while I couldn't predict my parents' response come morning or the fabrications Madison might concoct, an inner shift had occurred irrevocably. I was done being the casualty. I was done being confined. Just like at every birthday bash, every gathering, and every milestone I'd reached, some turmoil or festivity centered on my sibling always stole the spotlight. It was the recurring pattern. I might be chasing a vision, hitting a target, and abruptly, pow, focus shifted back to her. That evening, I had them gathered in my very own eating area. My relatives, the identical folks who'd stormed my territory and serenity, insisting I fund their ambitions while dismissing mine as trivial fancies. I glanced around at my home. The elegant glass fixture, which had drained half a year's earnings, glowed over their anticipating expressions, as though its radiance itself were scrutinizing them. The polished timber surfaces, which I'd smoothed and coated personally, sparkled under their footwear. The very souls that entered my domain like it was communal property. And amid that turmoil, Dr. Chen's words resonated in my mind, gentle yet resolute. You can't dictate others' responses to your limits. You can merely decide if you'll uphold them. I drew in a steadying breath. I require some reflection on this, I declared at length. Madison flicked her eyes skyward, her pitch turning to that petulant whine that invariably bent everyone to her will. Reflect on it. What's left to mull over? You either value the clan, or you don't. You either wish for my joy, or you're envious since I discovered a real admirer. Envious. There it surfaced once more. That term, the tag they'd affixed to me throughout existence whenever I ventured to claim something personal. Envious when Madison claimed the main sleeping quarters. Envious when she received a vehicle at 16 and all I snagged was a side gig. Envious when our parents covered her university fees while I sank in loans for my own. I'm not envious, I countered, my words quiet but resolute. I'm exhausted. Dad folded his limbs. Exhausted by what? By kin who cherish you, by those who've given up so much on your behalf. That query acted like a match, striking a buildup of resentment that had simmered within for months. The talks with Dr. Chen had unearthed plenty, and there amid them, it all erupted. What exactly have you given up for me? I inquired deliberately, locking eyes with my father. Quiet, drawn out, uneasy. I watched them scramble for a retort, yet none emerged since the reality was straightforward. I'd been the giver. I'd forgone my outings to log extra shifts. I'd let go of connections because finances kept me on edge. I'd traded my tranquility merely to sustain their ease, contentment, and reliance, as if I merited zilch back. We offered you shelter, Mom ventured eventually, shattering the quiet. Shelter? I echoed deliberately, nearly chuckling at the absurdity. Within my property, the one I maintain. Madison sneered. Come on, spare us the theatrics. You're carrying on like we're some load. And then it struck me. That instant, when clarity pierces the haze. When it all aligns and you perceive how distant you've wandered from safety, paddling for everyone else's sake. I sat in my personal meal space, hearing my loved ones rationalize why my funds ought to be theirs. Dr. Chen had readied me for this juncture, but experiencing it was a different beast. Grasping it conceptually didn't equate to facing it directly. I'll require a moment to ponder, I announced, and my delivery rang serene, oddly poised. How long? Mom probed with that edged inflection of one fearing the slip of authority. The location demands the initial payment. I'll inform you by morning, I responded while beginning to tidy the plates. That routine motion abruptly seemed alien, as if I found myself crashing at a friend's place that night, barely catching a wink of sleep. Whenever I shut my eyes, Madison's smug expression flashed before me, and my father's stern ultimatum echoed relentlessly in my mind. By 5 a.m. I threw in the towel. I dragged myself out of bed, brewed some coffee, and gazed at the dawn breaking through those brand new windows. Windows I'd shelled out for myself. Every single item in sight, from the furniture to the walls and every little touch, stemmed from my own hard work. Still, they acted like they could dictate how I spent it all. Grabbing my phone, I punched in Dr. Chen's emergency line, a step I'd never taken until now. Laura, her soothing, steady voice answered. What's happening? I unloaded the whole story. The dinner, the demand, the $28,000 they wanted from me. As the words poured out, I heard my own tone shift. No more trembling or timid. It came out strong, resolute. This was the sound of someone who'd grasped. She didn't have to shoulder the blame they dumped on her anymore. Come morning, I rose with the sun, my thoughts still churning over the chaos from before. Rays poured in through the panes I'd selected and funded so thoughtfully. For the first time in ages, I really sensed ownership over my own home. I fixed a cup of coffee, settled at the kitchen table, and drew in a steadying breath. The confrontation loomed, and I was ready for it. Heading downstairs to the dining area, I spotted my parents munching on breakfast, like the previous evening's blow-up never occurred. Madison shot me a glance laced with shock and entitlement, assuming I'd cave and slip back into line. But deep down, that old, compliant Laura had shattered. I've mulled over your request, I started, my words even and unwavering. And no, I won't do it. Dad almost choked on his sip. Excuse me. He growled, brows knitting. I'm not covering Madison's wedding costs, I stated again, cool and direct. I refuse to bankroll what's not my responsibility. I won't keep pouring my earnings into this family while you treat my possessions like communal property. Mom tilted toward me with her signature dramatic worry, the kind she'd wielded for decades. Laura, can't you see? This is about family unity. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. For whose sake? I shot back, edge in my voice. Madison's or yours, so you can keep playing the big shot on my dime and my sacrifices. Madison's mouth gaped, but no retort followed. Her gaze betrayed astonishment, bewilderment, a hint of dread. Dad scowled, folding his arms tight. Mom stared in a blend of incredulity and pleading. Yet I stayed composed. Finally, my limits stood firm, unyielding. If you're staying under my roof, you follow my rules. I pressed on. These lines I draw aren't up for debate. My funds aren't yours to claim, nor is my time, my effort, or my serenity. I've poured 15 years into sustaining you all, and that's ending now. The quiet hung heavy. They all absorbed the weight of my declaration, like it or not. Madison bolted up in a rage, her flawless facade cracking. "You don't get to speak to me that way," she snapped. "I'm your sibling." "True enough," I replied, holding steady. "But sisterhood doesn't entitle you to drain my resources, my finances, or my tranquility. From this point forward, I'm prioritizing my own path, not indulging your demands." My folks fell silent. Madison retreated, and there, for the first time, I caught a spark of reluctant admiration in her look, tangled with unease. They realized manipulation wouldn't work this round. No guilt trips, no arm twisting. That morning, sipping my coffee as sunlight bathed my home, a long absent feeling washed over me. Liberation. A surge of strength, command over my destiny. After years, I stepped into the lead role of my own tale. And deep down, I knew the dynamics had shifted forever. "How are you holding up?" Dr. Chen inquired. "Furious," I admitted, "yet liberated too. I'm seeing the reality clearly now." "And what's that reality?" She probed. "It's been financial exploitation, psychological control, a household viewing me solely as their endless supply." She paused briefly. "So, what's your next move?" "Get them out of my space." "Then that's your path forward." I phoned in sick to the office and dedicated the morning to planning. I dug into guest rights under housing laws. Since they weren't formal renters, their safeguards were minimal. I summoned a locksmith for new locks on the doors. I even scoped out relocation services, determined to cover all bases. At 7:08 a.m., I rapped on Dad's door. He emerged in his bathrobe, irritation plain. "We have to discuss something," I told him. "What now?" He grumbled. "You all need to pack up and leave today." His features twisted through shock, anger, then outright denial. "You're joking, right?" His tone quivered with frustration. "You've got 24 hours to relocate." "Laura, this is ridiculous. We're blood." "Family or not," I cut in. "She doesn't view folks as a personal cash machine." Mom showed up in the corridor wearing that exaggerated expression of worry she always pulled out. "What's happening?" she inquired. "I'm telling you to pack up and go by tomorrow evening. This revolves around the wedding funds, right?" Madison cut in from her room's entrance. "No, I'm insisting you leave because over 3 years, you've stayed in my home without pitching in for costs and acted like my sole purpose was to wait on you, hand and foot. The request for wedding cash was merely the breaking point." "So where do we even head to?" Mom pressed. "That's not my concern anymore," I responded steadily. "You're grown-ups, sort it out on your own." "You can't simply evict us like this," Madison shouted. As a lawyer, I was well aware of their legal standing as extended visitors. "Actually, I can," I stated resolutely, "and that's exactly what I'm doing." Dad advanced a pace, his expression grave. "If you go through with this, it'll be irreversible. You'll be picking cash over kin." "No," I replied, my tone even. "You opted for finances over family when you settled here and assumed my earnings were for shared use." This is insane," Madison shrieked on the edge of a breakdown. "You're tearing our family apart over money." "I'm not ruining a thing," I shot back. "I'm shielding myself from those who've exploited my kindness for 3 years." "Kindness," Dad scoffed. "We're your folks. We brought you up. We nourished you. We sheltered you for 18 years. And I've settled that score by offering shelter, meals, and monetary aid for 3 years," I pointed out. "The balance is even." Mom shifted to a gentler tone, trying to bargain. Sweetie, are you bothered by the wedding? We get it. Perhaps we could work out a middle ground. It's not the wedding at all, I explained. It's regarding dignity. It's about limits. It's about simple equity. For 3 years, I've shouldered the financial load for 3 adults while getting dismissed in my very own space. That's inaccurate, Mom objected. It is accurate, I retorted. When's the last time you checked on my well-being? When's the last occasion you recognized my 60-hour work weeks that kept everyone afloat? When have you acted like this was truly my domain and not some shared asset you claimed as yours? Quiet fell. You've got 24 hours, I restated with authority. By tomorrow night, I'll switch the locks, and if you're still here, I'll summon the authorities to escort you out for unlawful presence. You wouldn't have the nerve, Dad taunted. Madison began weeping. Genuine sobs now. Laura, come on, it's your sister. Yet I sensed no remorse, just a sharp sense of resolution I'd lacked before. At last, my residence, my existence, and my funds were mine to command. For the first time, I truly owned my path. That morning carried heavy tension. I observed them shuffling about the place, bewildered, offering justifications, glancing around like their assumed stability was crumbling. Madison continued bawling, hiding her face in her palms as Mom strode to and fro, muttering about my heartlessness. Dad stayed planted in his chair, arms folded, like fate had abandoned him. What on earth now? Mom murmured, mostly to herself. Now, I declared steadily, you discover how to support yourselves. 3 years sufficed. While they clumsily gathered their belongings, attempting to pretend all was routine, a sensation washed over me that I hadn't known in ages. Liberation. Each bag they hauled, each photo they removed, each vacant shelf they abandoned, signaled that my home was reclaiming its solitude as mine. Madison cast me a final glare, blending fury and surrender. You can't pull this off, she attempted, her words cracking. Oh, but I can, I answered composedly. Call it fairness, limits, and esteem. Dad rose at last and released a deep, defeated exhale. Mom pressed her face into her hands. I'd never experienced such strength. What had felt unattainable was now tangible. I was safeguarding my world. As the final bag exited through the door, I shut my eyes and drew in a long breath. Quiet enveloped the space, a comforting quiet brimming with liberty and potential. For the first time in ages, I could traverse my living area free from intrusion, without dread or shame. All of it was mine, crafted through my toil, my labor, my journey. That afternoon, I lounged on the couch with a mug of joe and grinned. Not a fleeting grin, but one rooted in profound calm. I realized the journey wasn't complete, that tough moments, tangled feelings, and lingering recollections might resurface. But I also understood retreat was impossible. I'd drawn firm lines, guarded my territory, and prioritized my own needs after years of neglect. Gazing around my home, every feature sparkled, the polished wooden planks catching the rays, the pieces I'd selected with intention, the panes allowing sunlight to brighten my realm. Each element affirmed that my dedication and hardships had paid off, and now no one could reclaim what belonged to me. That evening, I drifted into untroubled sleep. No apprehension, no self-reproach. No unreasonable requests, only tranquility. For the very first time, I found myself able to envision a future without the nagging sense of disloyalty toward others. I'd come to realize that protecting my own interests didn't mean turning my back on anyone. It meant taking back control of my existence, my value, and my joy. Deep down, I sensed that everything had shifted irreversibly, and the existence I truly merited was now unfolding. I'm tying the knot, Madison shared, her voice quivering a bit. This ought to be the most joyful chapter in my life. A flicker of that familiar guilt pulled at me, the impulse to comfort her, to mend her troubles, to play the role of the selfless sibling who always prioritizes others. Yet I recalled Dr. Chen's advice. You can't ignite yourself just to provide warmth for everyone else. Madison, I responded steadily, you deserve a joyful ceremony. It simply won't come from dipping into my nest egg. But Tyler Dixon anticipates an elegant event, she protested. His relatives are well off. They'll look down on us if we can't swing something proper. That exposed the core issue. Madison felt ashamed of their money woes and anticipated I'd bail them out. Perhaps Tyler's folks should cover it, I suggested resolutely. No, they shouldn't have to, and I ought to handle it myself, Madison conceded out of rebuttals. The remainder of the day unfolded as I observed their downward spiral. Phone calls to kin, desperate online hunts for housing, intense quarrels about who bore the blame. It appeared no one paused to reflect that they might have engineered this mess themselves. As evening approached, Tyler Dixon showed up. From the window, I saw Madison dissolve into sobs against him. They lingered on the veranda for 20 minutes in discussion before he departed, bewildered and annoyed. Madison re-entered with puffy eyes, but a fresh resolve. Tyler thinks we can delay the nuptials by a couple of months, she declared. He'll discuss funding help with his parents. That's progress, I said. Issue resolved. Actually, no, the issue remains. You're still evicting us from the home. Her tone sharpened. Indeed, I am. But why now? She pressed, still disbelieving. We've sorted the ceremony. I gazed at her, amazed she hadn't grasped it yet. Madison, this went far beyond just the wedding. The ensuing 24 hours turned into a storm of familial turmoil. Outreach from distant relatives I hadn't connected with in ages, all inquiring why I was forsaking my loved ones. Aunt Patricia rang thrice. Uncle Robert fired off an extensive message on familial principles. Even my cherished grandmother phoned to question if I'd taken leave of my senses. Word is, you're ousting them over a marriage, she murmured gently. Grandma, that's not quite accurate. How did it really go down? I laid out the full picture. The 3 years of no rent residence, the mounting costs, the utter absence of any support, capped by the ultimatum for matrimonial funds. Oh dear, she breathed. I was clueless. Folks often aren't skilled at shaping the story. Their expectations aren't fair. I'm so glad you're advocating for your own needs. Her endorsement carried more weight than I could have anticipated. As the family elder, my grandmother perceived the truth plainly. Though my parents and Madison persisted relentlessly, Dad attempted persuasion, citing the challenges of job hunting in his later years. Mom leaned on manipulation, evoking how my departed grandfather would feel let down. Madison swung from fury to weeping, even within single exchanges. So where do we even head now? Mom inquired yet again, for the 10th time. Rentals exist, temporary lodgings, other family members, I answered. Handle it on your own, using which funds? Dad challenged. Dad, seek employment. Madison, do the same. Groundbreaking idea, isn't it? You're acting heartless, Madison accused. No, I'm acting realistically, I shot back. You're grown individuals who opted out of contributing because my generosity kept things comfortable. At 6 p.m. on Tuesday, precisely 24 hours post-deadline, they hadn't budged. Returning from my shift, I discovered them in the den amid their luggage, resembling displaced wanderers. We require extra days, Dad pleaded. You've already had 3 years, I stated unyieldingly. Only 1 additional week. We've lined up some rental leads, Madison bargained. Absolutely not, I interrupted. I retrieved my cell and punched in 911. What on earth? Mom exclaimed in shock, summoning authorities to escort trespassers off my premises. You can't mean it, Madison uttered. Just try stopping me, I retorted. Before completing the call, Dad raised his palms. All right, we're leaving, he agreed. It required yet another 2 hours for them to gather their belongings fully. From the kitchen, tea in hand, I observed their exit with an unexpected serenity. This could have been devastating. Yet it resembled the release of a massive burden from my shoulders. Mom was the final one out. She halted in the doorway, eyes brimming. "Wishing you true contentment," she murmured. "I intend to find it," I assured her. Once they'd gone, I toured my home solo for the first instance in 3 years. The quiet was exquisite. My domain, my guidelines, my serenity. I prepared a meal solely for me, and I savored the solitude at my kitchen table, free from any objections to my decisions. I tuned into my favorite TV shows without any haggling. For the first time ever, it all belonged solely to me. Now that the home stood vacant, after years of constraint, I could finally inhale deeply without the sense of being scrutinized, criticized, or exploited. I strolled from room to room, running my hands along the walls, examining the surfaces, realizing that all the hard work I'd invested over the years had truly paid off. Each feature, each item, each recollection existed because I'd selected it for myself, not to satisfy others. I chose to settle into the living room with a journal and ink, jotting down aspirations, ambitions, and intentions that had faded while I devoted my existence to indulging the desires and requirements of everyone else. At last, I sensed the ability to shape my future on my own terms. Gone were the threats, the pressures, the mind games, replaced by serenity and boundless opportunities. That evening, I whipped up a simple meal just for me, ignited some candles, played gentle tunes, and drew in slow, calming breaths. Finally, the place felt like a haven rather than a cage. I realized perfection wouldn't arrive instantly, but the liberty surging through me outweighed any ease they'd offered at the expense of my vitality. In the days that followed, I turned my attention inward. I picked up stalled legal matters I'd shelved. I carved out moments for my well-being, my fitness, and my genuine passions. With each passing day, I grew more resilient, more assured, and sharper on what I truly merited. No longer could anyone sap my vitality or my funds. That realization sparked a self-assurance I'd never known before. I began pondering getaways, journeys I'd delayed for ages, and ventures that would foster my development and solidify my autonomy. None of my choices required external validation anymore. For the first time, everything I pursued was purely self-directed. The surge of empowerment was exhilarating. There was no room for remorse, coercion, or compelled adaptation. I came to see that the real kin worth cherishing weren't the ones who'd mistreated me, but those who honored and appreciated my worth. In that instant, it dawned on me that safeguarding my existence, my health, and my limits wasn't egoism. It was genuine self-care. I wandered through the garden I'd nurtured for so long, letting the crisp breeze invigorate me. I acknowledged surviving a massive emotional tempest, yet I also recognized emerging tougher, more aware, and liberated like never before. After years, I sank into my cherished recliner, sipped some tea, and let a grin spread across my face. It was all mine now, my domain, my schedule, my calm, my very being. As dusk fell, I felt utter conviction that I'd seized back the essentials, my autonomy and my harmony, and nothing could strip them from me again. I chuckled darkly when Sarah shared that with me. "Well," I responded, "it looks like I've earned the title of family outcast now." "Don't let it get to you," she advised. "Folks like them fabricate tales to dodge, owning up to their actions." Once I ended the call, I gazed up at the ceiling, pondering how a falsehood can morph into reality with enough repetition. Within days, the gossip had taken on a momentum of its own, that I'd evicted them to the curb, turned icy, let wealth corrupt me. Nobody recalled the endless sacrifices, the nights without sleep fretting over bills, or the times I'd skimped on my own needs so they could thrive. Occasionally, I considered phoning Madison to clarify once more how events had spiraled beyond control. But then memories of her insincere sobs and manipulative ploys flooded back, and I knew it was pointless. You can't debate with someone who only listens to what benefits them. One afternoon, sipping coffee during a park stroll, I bumped into Clara, a former university acquaintance. She mentioned spotting my parents at a relative's place, claiming they were rebuilding after the heartbreak I'd inflicted. "The heartbreak you caused," Clara echoed, arching a brow. I had no idea insisting on dignity and personal space counted as aggression. "Apparently, it does in my lineage," I shot back with a tired grin. Time marched on. My home stayed spotless, serene, and undisturbed. I prepared meals based on my moods, enjoyed my preferred programs, and rested at night unburdened by the presence of 3 others consuming my oxygen and vitality. Still, in quieter spells, a blend of sorrow and solace would sweep over me. Sorrow for the ideal family I'd longed for but never had. Solace for summoning the bravery to shatter a pattern that had been eroding me bit by bit. On a Sunday morning, I made up my mind to drop by my grandmother's. She alone had voiced her pride in me, and I craved her company. Upon arrival, she welcomed me with her signature affectionate beam and poured coffee alongside fresh pastries. "My sweet girl, rumors have reached me," she murmured, "but I recognize your true character, and I understand the depths of what you offered before things came to this." "Guilt creeps in at times," I admitted, as if she had cut ties because she couldn't tolerate the mistreatment any longer. "No, dear," she responded resolutely. "You don't fail by growing weary of exploitation. It's the abuser who betrays the affection of those around them." Her insight resonated deeply within me. It was the first occasion where I sensed true comprehension without requiring a detailed account. That afternoon, I lingered there, absorbing her tales and recalling that not every branch of my lineage was poisonous. Somewhere in that heritage lingered genuine affection. As evening fell and I headed back, I settled by the window with a goblet of wine, gazing at the urban glow. The world appeared transformed, not flawless, yet authentic. I realized my folks would keep badmouthing me. Madison would devise fresh tactics to portray herself as the sufferer, and plenty would still buy into their narrative. Yet inwardly, a shift had occurred. Their validation no longer mattered to me. I stopped trying to defend my choices. I'd uncovered something far superior to their endorsement, my inner liberation. And I recognized that no gossip could strip that from me. Ultimately, it didn't bother me if others cast me as the antagonist in the tale, for the reality was straightforward. For the initial time in my existence, I emerged as the hero of my own serenity. The ensuing weeks brought revelation. Freed from the relentless obligation to satisfy all, I reconnected with my core self. After years, my schedule belonged to me alone. I savored leisurely morning meals. I strolled the streets at a relaxed pace, and I immersed myself in my law-related endeavors, without interruptions from grievances or entreaties. I began prioritizing personal growth. I enrolled in photography courses, a passion sidelined since university days. Full afternoons were devoted to wandering with my lens, snapping the golden hues of dusk, foliage, and the vitality I'd overlooked amid the mental and financial drain from my parents in Madison. Every image served as a cue that I now chose what merited my focus and energy. I also revived dormant bonds. I gathered with Sarah and Clara multiple times weekly, exchanging chuckles and secrets. And for once, I grasped that kinship could be selected, not dictated. These individuals bolstered me, heard me out, and rejoiced in my successes without expecting reciprocity. It was a nourishing form of connection I'd never known in my upbringing. Professionally, my vitality shifted dramatically. I projected greater confidence and concentration. Patrons detected my revitalized zeal, and peers praised the sharpness of my judgments. Jennifer remarked, "Laura, you appear utterly renewed." She was spot on. My tranquil state permeated every facet of my career and private world. One evening, as I tidied my workspace, it dawned on me that I'd cleared the overdue bills deferred by familial pressures. Now, savings were possible, along with travel plans and modest indulgences that had once felt out of reach. I even contemplated relocating to a spacious unit or refreshing my space to embody only my tastes and aspirations. I reached a vital insight. Limits weren't retaliations, they safeguarded my well-being. And by shielding myself, I could truly relish my connections, career, and existence free from remorse or dread. Each day reinforced that my choice had been wise. Evenings found me on the couch in the den, window ajar to let in the gentle gusts, reflecting on the ordeals I'd weathered. The moisture in my eyes stemmed not from sorrow, but release. I knew I'd outlasted prolonged coercion, and now I held the reins. Then, an unforeseen development arose. Tyler Dixon phoned me. His voice carried a new respect, devoid of apprehension. "Laura," he began, "I need to express regret for not seeing it earlier." Madison shared her side, but I yearned for your viewpoint. I recounted my experience methodically and transparently. Ultimately, Tyler just stated, "Thanks for confiding in me. I'm pleased you established your limits." For the first time, I believed in fostering balanced ties with those who honored my choices and appreciated my value. The subsequent period focused on restoration. I coated certain surfaces in fresh paint, acquired modern pieces, and gradually, my dwelling mirrored my autonomy and resilience. Absent were the shouts, sobs, or impositions, replaced by tranquility, mirth, and the rhythm of the existence I'd embraced. At last, a key truth crystallized. My joy wasn't reliant on others. My welfare was absolute, and the autonomy I'd secured was undeniably my paramount success. For the first time, beholding my abode bathed in the day's glow, I offered a sincere grin, not for accolades from external eyes, but for reclaiming my existence, my safeguards, and my calm. And that, I knew, was the ultimate conquest one could claim. "I'm sorry," I inquired, raising a brow. "Yes, I wish to atone," she pressed on with that scheming grin I'd grown adept at deciphering since I let out a heavy sigh, reflecting on all the financial burdens from our shared past, the home, the endless troubles. I realized this conversation wouldn't be easy. Madison had always been skilled at glossing over issues to bend things in her favor. Rising from my seat, I moved to the window, allowing the quiet to settle in before I spoke. Gazing out at the urban sprawl from my office window, I inhaled deeply and then stated, "All right, we'll discuss it, but first, hear me out on what you've always avoided grasping." Madison's brow furrowed just a bit, caught off guard by my resolve. "For 3 years, I've covered all the costs. You've held a job for no longer than 6 months at a stretch. Your bills, my folks' needs, the rent you dodged, the meals, outfits, getaways, everything. Yet you expected me to bankroll your wedding like my own existence meant nothing." Her gaze widened slightly, though her expression held steady, as if she were still plotting how to sway me. "I just aimed for perfection," she responded, attempting to ease the tension. "I figured you'd back me up." "This isn't about backing you," I interrupted, steady yet resolute. "It's regarding dignity and limits. I'm not your cash machine or personal aid. Enough with the mind games, no more threats." She fell quiet, and briefly I caught a flicker of awareness in her eyes, blended with shock and irritation. That glimpse empowered me. At last, I was voicing the long toll of mistreatment without a trace of remorse. "Laura," she started, her eyes dropping, "I never realized. I couldn't picture you feeling like that." "Feeling used," I countered, exhausted from placing your joy above my own. "Exactly, Madison. That's precisely how it was, and I'll never brush it aside again." Gradually, her features shifted. For the first time, genuine remorse surfaced, tinged with apprehension. The reality she'd constructed, where I'd forever fix her messes, was starting to crack. "So you won't pitch in for the wedding?" she murmured softly, a trace of surrender in her voice. No, I answered with quiet strength. If it's your event to own, you'll need to cover it on your own, and Tyler ought to hear that loud and clear. I'm done funding what's not my concern. She stood up gradually from her seat, each motion seeming to underscore the erosion of her easy ride. She met my eyes briefly, a mix of bitterness and reluctant acceptance flashing there, before she pivoted to exit. Thanks for hearing me out, I added as she reached the door. I suppose that's fair, she muttered without turning back and slipped away. Once the door clicked shut, solitude enveloped me. I drew in a long breath, sensing a massive weight dissolve from my frame. It went beyond finances. It spanned years of dominance, coaxing, and pressure. For once, real air filled my lungs. That evening, I settled at my workspace, jotting thoughts in my diary. Each entry reinforced my vow. No more being exploited or swayed. My hours, resources, and serenity belonged solely to me, and nobody could demand them. As the words flowed, a true grin spread across my lips. At long last, after endless concessions, Laura stood liberated. Come morning, an unfamiliar lightness washed over me. After years of chaos, I shaped my routine free from Kin's expectations or outbursts. Sipping coffee in the kitchen, sunlight poured through the panes I'd funded and selected with care. I breathed easy and mused, "This belongs to me alone." I resolved to tackle something long delayed, arranging a modest getaway just for myself. No extravagance or validation required. All I craved was the liberty I'd fought hard to claim. Scrolling through coastal spots, I envisioned strolling shoeless, hearing the waves, embracing a world that granted me only regard and calm. Midway through my search, my cell buzzed. Tyler Dixon was on the line. "Laura," he greeted, his voice more at ease. I needed to express my gratitude, not merely for handling your family matters, but for helping me see clearly. I've yielded too often to Madison, and now I get what truly counts. That's great to hear, I said. You've learned that affection doesn't demand forfeiting your well-being for someone who ignores your limits. Following our chat, Tyler shifted gears too. He began enforcing his own rules with Madison, showing her that grown-up existence isn't a contest won by the most insistent voice. A quiet fulfillment bloomed in me. My choice had freed me and rippled positively to another. In the ensuing days, I understood the need to restore more than my inner world. I had to refresh my surroundings. I refreshed the lounge walls with hues that sparked joy. I swapped out pieces, introduced greenery and snapshots capturing my current self, a self-reliant, resilient, unbound individual. Every item whispered tales of self-rule and deliberate picks. Back in my law work, vigor surged through me anew. Cases picked up on my vitality and assurance. I sensed greater. It became sharper and more defined than before. I began getting accolades for my efforts, and each bit of praise served as a reminder that I'd accomplished it all on my own, without seeking validation from those who'd once exploited my kindness. One afternoon, strolling downtown with my camera in hand, I stumbled upon a community art show. I paused to admire the canvases, and a wave of excitement washed over me. Bold hues, confident brushwork, tales shared boldly. Reflecting on my own trials, I grinned. At last, I could shape my existence freely, without others imposing their hues or shades. I resumed visits with my grandmother, who turned into my sanctuary and guide. Her steady encouragement showed me that even if some relatives clung to their distorted version of events, I possessed the strength to craft a fresh chapter, one built on dignity, limits, and self-respect. Day by day, serenity grew within me. I mastered declining requests without remorse, placing my priorities first, savoring the quiet in my home, and cherishing my downtime. My world no longer spun around coercion and demands. Instead, it centered on my aspirations, decisions, and joy. Gradually, Laura uncovered a treasure far surpassing any legacy or cash. her independence, her territory, and the authority to chart her path. For the first time in ages, gazing at the horizon as dusk fell, I beamed with no reservations, secure in the knowledge that no force could strip away what I truly claimed: my world, my terms, my profound tranquility. "This caught me off guard," I murmured, striving to stay composed while digesting her words. "I've reflected on all that's transpired, and it dawned on me that you might have capitalized on my giving nature. And maybe," Madison continued cautiously, choosing her phrases deliberately, "I'd like to mend our bond. Kinship matters too much to squander over finances." "What do you have in mind precisely?" I replied, folding my arms. "Tyler and I intend to reimburse you," she explained. "Not in a lump sum naturally, but through installments. Additionally, we'll fund our ceremony ourselves. Nothing extravagant, just modest." It seemed overly ideal, prompting me to suspect a hidden motive right away. "So, what's the real angle, Madison?" I probed, watching her closely. Her features tensed just a bit. "No strings attached," she insisted. "I simply miss my sibling." "Then why do you appear ready to request a favor?" I pressed, bracing for the inevitable. She fidgeted with her bag's handle, a telltale sign I'd spotted long ago. "Actually, Tyler's place is cramped for 4 occupants, and the rental agreement bans long-term visitors, so we wondered." I anticipated the unspoken plea, voicing it myself. "You'd like to return here." "Just for a short stint," she hastened to add, "until we secure a stable home, and we'd contribute rent this round, I swear." I reclined in my seat, scrutinizing her every nuance. She appeared genuine, yet Madison had mastered the art of feigned honesty when pursuing her goals. "What amount for rent?" I inquired. "Around $800 monthly," she suggested. My home loan by itself ran $2,800, excluding bills, property fees, coverage, and upkeep. $800 scarcely met a fraction of the true outlay, though it beat their prior $500 bid. And just how brief would this interim phase last? I wondered. "No more than 6 months," she assured. "Right up to the nuptials and settling into our spot." "What about the ceremony?" I followed up. "We're eyeing more affordable spots." "Perhaps $15,000 total," she answered. $15,000. I pondered silently. A hefty sum for the unemployed, but preferable to $28,000. "Madison, what makes me believe you'll follow through now?" I demanded firmly. "Since I've grasped the error of my ways," she responded, squirming a little. "I recognize my past mistakes." "Which insight hit you? Specifically?" I challenged, arching a brow. She shifted restlessly, averting her gaze. "That ties to loved ones outweigh cash," she whispered. "That missed the mark entirely. True wisdom would involve realizing grown-ups must sustain themselves and share household burdens equitably." Still, she framed it as funds clashing with loyalty, overlooking courtesy and personal space. "I value the regret you expressed," I noted thoughtfully. "Yet I'm unwilling to revisit the living arrangements yet." Her poised facade slipped further. "Laura, I'm begging you. Tyler Dixon will evict us as well. We lack options." "What of your folks?" I countered. "They've rented a unit." "A tiny one," she noted. "Scarce room for them, never mind adding Tyler and me." Then it clicked. My parents had obtained their independent dwelling, likely a budget-friendly setup suiting their needs. Well done, them. Madison at 28 with a university education, you could hunt for employment, generate income, and lease your own space like countless responsible adults here. But opportunities are scarce, and many roles demand prior roles that I lack, since I've stepped away from the workforce. She mentioned aiding the household as her excuse. That line about aiding the household stuck out. 3 years without a job morphed into supposed family duty. "You've been jobless because you decided against working," I shot back. "That's unfair. Somebody needed to look after Mom and Dad," she protested desperately. "What kind of help did they require?" I pressed steadily. "Dad's not impaired." and Mom's fully able-bodied. Madison's mouth opened and shut, but no solid response emerged. The reality was straightforward. My parents required monetary backing, which I'd supplied, all while Madison reaped the rewards without pitching in. Listen, she pivoted, switching approaches. Tyler's beginning to probe about finances and duties. If I don't resolve this quickly, he could end the engagement. There it lay. The regret stemmed not from any growth on her part. It arose from panic. Her fallback was unraveling, and Madison was sensing the squeeze. Perhaps that outcome would suit you both, I remarked evenly, and her eyes flared wide in shock. How could you utter that? I adore Tyler, she burst out. Do you truly cherish him? I inquired. Or merely the notion of matrimony and letting someone else handle your money woes? That's an awful remark, she responded, her tone quivering. Madison, what do you contribute to this partnership apart from anticipating Tyler to cover all costs? I stated, letting the query linger unresolved. I watched her hunt for a reply, yet it eluded her. At last, in a faint whisper, she admitted, I offer affection. And that's when I realized she was confronting the facts. Affection can't excuse recklessness or disregard. Affection, I noted, folding my arms. Affection won't settle debts, Madison. It won't earn esteem or repay the efforts others invested in you. She went quiet, choking back her retorts. Her gaze, once brimming with assurance and haughtiness, now glistened with uncertainty. I sensed she was beginning to comprehend, if just a bit, that existence didn't revolve around others fixing her issues. All right, she murmured softly in the end. Perhaps I erred. Not perhaps, Madison. You erred across 3 years. You existed without accountability, relying on my funds, my home, my tolerance. And now you seek re-entry like it never occurred. My tone stayed steady, composed, yet commanding. She dropped her eyes, fidgeting anxiously with her fingers. I observed her weighing each phrase, each fallout from her choices. Listen, I went on. Should you wish to return, it'll involve strict terms. No complimentary residence, no assumptions on my resources, no sentimental coercion. All costs must be equitable, and all conduct must demonstrate regard. Madison lifted her head and met my stare, startled and somewhat alarmed. So, does that allow me to remain? She ventured warily. It signifies that should you opt to stay, you'll function as a mature individual, I clarified. Timely rent payments, sharing in bills, honoring my domain and limits, and the nuptials. You and Tyler foot the bill for your event. I won't contribute a cent more. Understood. She breathed out, nearly speechless. I believe I can manage that. Are you certain? I demanded resolutely. Since this round permits no further leeway. No additional pretexts, no complaints, no scheming. Each deed carries repercussions. She inclined her head gradually, inhaling deeply. For the initial time, I detected a glimmer of accountability, a recognition of her past deeds and the shifts required. Then I added, easing my delivery a touch. We might attempt a fresh start, but keep in mind this extends beyond finances or ceremonies. It's centered on courtesy, limits, and confidence. Rebuilding demands gradual progress. Madison shut her eyes and exhaled, and briefly it appeared she'd absorbed the gravity of her missteps. Thanks, Laura, she uttered shakily. I won't overlook it. You'd better not, I countered, for I won't erase the events nor permit their repetition. The remainder of the day passed in outlining the Fresh Pack's specifics. Madison pledged to seek employment and accrue funds for the wedding. Tyler Dixon consented to discuss fiscal maturity with her. I recorded it all, from dues to household guidelines. At last, a tangible, straightforward, and balanced strategy existed. As she departed my workspace that evening, I spotted a shift. The overconfidence yielded to modesty, though tentative. It fell short of ideal, and I anticipated nothing more. Yet it marked an initial stride. For the first occasion in ages, I believe the balance of equity in my residence was inclining favorably. That evening, sealing my workspace entrance and gazing at my image in the glass, I offered a subtle grin. I'd weathered the fiercest familial tempest of existence. I'd established limits, safeguarded my territory, and imparted to Madison a vital insight that might demand time to absorb, but one she ultimately had to confront. And crucially, for the first time, my existence felt truly my own. Affection is an interim. It's not sufficient for a solid marriage. You require collaboration, joint duties, and equal regard. The arrangement you're proposing to Tyler mirrors precisely what you presented to me: the opportunity to fund your existence while getting shame and coercion back in exchange. Madison sprang to her feet suddenly, her remaining poise evaporating at last. You've turned icy, Laura. Achievement has chilled you. No, I countered softly. Establishing limits has actually improved my well-being. She departed from my office in tears, and that familiar twinge of remorse stirred in my gut. Yet on this occasion I identified it correctly. It was indoctrination. Decades of ingrained habits that left me accountable for everyone else's feelings, regardless if those sentiments stemmed from their personal choices. Later that evening, I reached out to Dr. Chen. "How are you processing the exchange?" she inquired. Remorseful yet resolute, I responded. I perceived her intentions clearly, and I resisted her tactics. "That's progress," she noted. "Transformation seldom feels pleasant. You're dismantling lifelong behaviors. It demands real effort." She appeared utterly adrift as she exited. Madison is adrift. However, Laura, it's not your duty to guide her back. She must undertake that journey independently. She hit the mark. Still, witnessing my siblings' turmoil pained me. The shift now lay in my grasp of the divide between support and indulgence. Over the ensuing weeks, snippets filtered through family chatter. Madison and Tyler Dixon had parted ways. She'd relocated to a buddy's place. My folks were managing in their compact apartment. Dad held a part-time gig at the local tool shop. Mom handled remote data tasks. The household tale had shifted once more. I emerged as the thriving sibling who'd forsaken her kin during their darkest hour. The one prioritizing wealth over affection, profession over relatives, self-interest over devotion. A year back, I might have swallowed that tale, but counseling equipped me to spot the coercion. Our clan lore insisted that demanding simple dignity in my space equated to egoism, that urging grown-ups to fend for themselves was harsh, that declining to bankroll others' aspirations amounted to desertion. I rejected it all now. Yet the real challenge to my resolve arrived 6 months on, at 2 a.m., when Madison rang me in hysterics. "Laura, I require assistance." I bolted upright, fully awake in an instant. "What's the issue? Are you injured?" "I'm expecting," she uttered amid the weeping. The revelation struck like a gut blow. Madison, jobless and unattached, was set to become a parent. "Are you certain?" I pressed. "I did 3 tests. I visited the clinic." "Absolutely." "Who's the dad?" "Some fellow I encountered in a pub. I lack even his genuine contact." My spirit shattered for her sake. This epitomized the chaos my relatives excelled at creating, the sort demanding swift intervention from an outsider. "What support do you want?" I queried, anticipating the reply. "A child is beyond my means, Laura. I struggle to cover meals. I need funds for the physician. I need housing suitable for an infant. I simply need aid." There it stood, the dire situation that would validate it all, the upheaval rendering me the antagonist should I fail to intervene promptly. And for the initial time, I inhaled deeply and recalled my lessons. Aid doesn't entail erasing yourself through self-sacrifice. This round, I refused to perpetuate the bailout cycle sustaining my family's reliance on me. It wasn't egoism. It was endurance and instilling limits, painful as it might be. I drew in a steady breath and stated evenly, "Madison, I'll assist you." Yes, though not as in the past. I won't assume control of your existence or your dilemmas. Now, there are firm stipulations. Stipulations, she wailed. But it's an infant. I can't manage solo. Precisely, I concurred. An infant signifies accountability. I can't shoulder it all pretending no issues exist. You must decide, seek employment, budget wisely, and secure lodging. I can cover essentials, healthcare expenses, and starter supplies, but the balance falls to you. She gazed at me with eyes widened in terror, as though her reality were collapsing, which it was, but I grasped a truth she hadn't grasped yet. Authentic existence offers no mercy to the unprepared or unboundaried. And regarding Tyler, I wondered, does he intend to step up? No, she replied shakily. He remains clueless on handling it. I exhaled. Naturally, I'd always been the fixer for every adult's mess. But no longer. This instance, I define the guidelines and adhere to them. All right, I continued. I'll cover the pressing matters. Doctor visits, starter diapers, a month's groceries. But you'll pursue work and independent housing. No crashing at my place, no anticipating full financial coverage from me. Got it. Madison inclined her head gradually, tears persisting, yet now with a spark of comprehension. I sensed her beginning to realize the world granted her no entitlements. That reliance wasn't rooted in affection, security, or kinship. It was simply a habit she'd mastered how to manipulate. Laura, she uttered amid her sobs, are you truly able to go through with this without any remorse? Absolutely, I answered resolutely. This time, my actions stem from self-respect, not from shame or worry that you'll resent me. I'm doing this to honor my own worth and to guide you toward accountable living. Time went by, and Madison started searching for employment while mapping out her future. The process proved tough. Interviews proved discouraging, and early efforts fell flat. Yet, for the initial occasion, she was compelled to tackle issues independently. I offered guidance from the sidelines, not as her rescuer. Tyler Dixon, too, started grasping the facts. He realized that affection can't substitute for duty, and a partnership can't endure on mere aspirations and outside pressures alone. Gradually, he shouldered some financial burdens, helping Madison recognize that relying on others to fund your existence isn't affection or achievement. In the midst of it all, I experienced a sensation absent for ages: serenity and sharp focus. I rested soundly, focused on my tasks without disruption, savored my home and accomplishments. No outbursts, no coercion, no shame masked as familial obligation. This marked the first instance I viewed my existence with defined limits and free from dread. Even though Madison had plenty to grasp regarding self-reliance and duty, I finally glimpsed her capacity for development. I couldn't shield her from every hardship, but I could allow her the chance to rise unaided. And that sufficed, since true care isn't about handling every task for someone else. It's about instructing, bolstering, and granting room for each person to navigate their path. My sibling, expecting a child, isolated, frantic, turned to me, her accomplished sibling, for salvation. Just a year prior, I'd have dashed to her aid without hesitation. I'd have covered all costs, stood by during her pregnancy, and made sure she wanted for nothing. I'd have persuaded myself that this was family solidarity. Madison, I regret that you're facing this ordeal, I stated in a steady yet gentle tone. Do you need assistance from me? The query lingered like a pathway I could traverse or destroy. I recognized I had to avoid slipping into familiar ruts. I can assist in exploring options, I added. Coverage for prenatal services through Medicaid, nutritional aid via WIC, shelters for solo moms. Support networks exist. That's not the kind of help I'm after. She wept, and I understood perfectly. I get it, I responded. However, Madison, choices exist for you. Outlets for aid, programs to lean on, systems designed for backing. You needn't face it solo, yet I can't serve as your only pillar. The quiet from her side hit hard. "So that's your stance," she murmured. "Your blood relative is carrying a baby and terrified, and you'll just leave me behind." "I'm not deserting you, Madison," I asserted strongly. "I'm declining to foster your dependencies." There's a clear line between aiding and bailing out. She ended the call abruptly, offering no further words. Sleep evaded me that evening. I stared at the overhead, second-guessing my choices. Had I grown callous? Was I forsaking my sister at her weakest? I'd emphasized limits so intensely that empathy might have faded. On deeper thought, clarity emerged. Empathy doesn't require endangering my fiscal stability or mental health. Assistance isn't shouldering the full weight of someone else's choices. I reached out to Dr. Chen for an urgent appointment, sensing your hesitation. She noted once I'd shared the details of Madison's plea. "Wouldn't anyone?" I countered. "She's expecting and isolated. Indeed, she's on her own and must decide her next steps. You can back her without absolving her of obligations. But suppose complications arise." I pressed, anxious. "What if she falters under the strain?" "Laura, what if she thrives?" She countered serenely. "What if navigating her turmoil head-on is precisely the push Madison requires to genuinely evolve?" It stung as a realization. Yet Dr. Chen spoke truth. Each rescue from her missteps had blocked her from confronting tough realities. I'd prolonged her reliance rather than nurturing autonomy. That very day, I took an unprecedented step. I delved into every aid option for expectant women in Madison's position. Health coverage initiatives, meal support, shelter provisions, vocational workshops, child-rearing courses. I assembled it all into a comprehensive file and sent it her way, accompanied by a note. "I trust your strength to manage this. These are resources to aid your progress." She offered no response. Over the ensuing period, updates trickled in via relatives. Madison had enrolled in Medicaid and WC. She'd secured spot in a short-term residence for soon-to-be mothers. Remarkably, she landed a flexible role at a daycare facility, ideal for including the infant. She coped, flawed, challenged, but progressing nonetheless. My folks, in parallel, were adapting to this shifted landscape. My father's temporary gig turned into a permanent position once his supervisor spotted his valuable background. My mother found herself liking the data input work and thought about returning to classes for computer skills. They were starting to handle their own affairs too. The family get-togethers that my grandma mentioned to me had become more intimate and subdued, free from the usual upheavals, reduced money troubles, and focused more on everyday stories rather than constant disasters. I didn't get invitations to those events, and that stung a bit. Yet they also stopped expecting me to fund them, plan them, or sort out issues that weren't my concern. I was getting used to the ache without letting it disrupt my calm. I was truly starting to value the room I'd created for my personal world. For the first time, I realized that drawing lines doesn't strip away affection or empathy. It just safeguards your own path while equipping others to stand on their own. And that, beyond any cash or self-denial, represented genuine liberation. The next few months brought genuine shifts. Madison was gradually figuring out how to navigate her days. Things weren't flawless. She occasionally missed deadlines for her housing aid. She'd get swamped by her side job and pregnancy classes, yet she tackled each challenge solo. I wasn't stepping in to rescue her. And at last, she was stepping up with actual accountability. I got bits of news secondhand, from texts by her buddy, updates via my grandma, or brief chats from Tyler Dixon. Every update served as confirmation that my choice had been wise, despite the pain of watching her persevere. "Laura," Tyler told me one afternoon, "she's truly getting the hang of it now, unlike the old days when you carried it all." I managed a grin, tinged with sorrow. Indeed, she was making it happen. Madison was maturing through tough lessons, grasping what I'd figured out long ago. At the same time, my folks were evolving as well. Dad quit griping over minor stuff, and Mom took pleasure in her desk duties. It wasn't an ideal setup, but each person was carving out their spot without requiring my constant self-offering. Then came a note from Madison. Laura, thanks for the advice you shared. I'm beginning to see how to deal with this. I realize I can't rely on you forever. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness or a ploy to pull strings. It signaled she was grabbing hold of her own path. For the first time, I felt genuine pride in her efforts, not in how I might patch things up. In the meantime, I pieced together my routine anew. My work remained intense, but my hours and vitality belonged entirely to me. I could rest soundly, dine without worry, tidy my space, and focus on self-care minus the remorse. I even picked up pursuits I'd ignored for ages, like yoga sessions, a photo workshop, and hanging out with pals unburdened by family mess. Each little step affirmed that establishing limits wasn't egoism. It was essential upkeep and preservation. 6 months went by. Madison welcomed a robust newborn. The process was tough. Endless wakeful nights, waves of anxiety, and plenty of crying. But she pulled through independently. No bailout from me. Tyler Dixon started grasping the household patterns too. Though some friction lingered, he figured out how to steer clear of my relatives' pressures. My parents, observing their girls steering their lives solo, came to honor the lines I'd drawn. They quit phoning me every day for funds. They dropped the guilt trips to sway me. They'd come to see I wasn't their endless fixer anymore. And while it challenged them, they accepted that existence could go on without my covering every shortfall. My grandmother, true to form, pointed out something key. Sweetie, you handled it right. You supported when it mattered, but you instilled self-reliance. That's real caring. She nailed it. My devotion to them didn't require wrecking my existence or letting them exploit me. Madison was picking up how to endure, confront the world, and parent without leaning wholly on me. My parents were settling into their roles without hauling me along. And I had reached true serenity. I discovered that limits don't erode fondness, they refine it. That occasionally, the most effective aid isn't fixing someone's world for them, but handing over the means so they can do it themselves. That mutual regard and duty form the bedrock of enduring bonds, and that my inner tranquility is beyond value. That became the profound insight it took me ages to absorb. Affection doesn't always demand total surrender. At times, it involves releasing, watching, and letting folks develop independently as you at last inhale deeply, thrive, and craft your fulfillment. A year following my firm stance, I ran into Tyler Dixon at a city cafe. He wasn't the same Tyler from those final chaotic family stretches. He appeared at ease, composed, nearly unburdened, like he was drawing breath freely for the first time, free from the burden of Madison's demands. "Laura," he uttered, stepping toward my table a bit hesitantly. "How have you been?" "Pretty well," I answered, offering a faint smile. "You seem fantastic," he commented. His words carried a genuine warmth, unlike the anxious edge he had when talking about his tie to Madison. "Thanks, I'm feeling fantastic," I responded, caught off guard by how accurately that captured my current reality. "I wanted to thank you," he continued, arching a brow as though hunting for the perfect phrasing. "For what?" I inquired, intrigued. "For that talk we shared on setting limits. It transformed everything for me," he clarified. "I came to see I was on the verge of wedding a woman who wanted me fixing all her issues without pitching in on any fixes herself. That's no true collaboration, Laura. It's lacking equality. It's missing shared regard." He spoke with such insight that I couldn't help but grin, pleased. "Seeing anyone these days?" I wondered, truly curious. "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I am," he admitted. "A woman who puts in equal effort, handles her own expenses, and sees me as an equal, not just an ATM." I beamed, sincerely delighted for him. It warmed my heart to know Tyler had grasped the essence of healthy connections too. "That sounds amazing," I remarked. "Oh, and Madison's little one is adorable. She shares pics now and then." My spirits dipped slightly. I hadn't laid eyes on images of my niece or nephew. I didn't even know the child's gender. Yet Tyler's offhand remark suggested Madison was holding up fine, keeping her routine and online updates going. Is she doing all right? I pressed, concern lingering despite it all. From what I gather, she is, he assured. She's figuring out how to juggle it all. The kid appears thriving and content. After Tyler departed, I lingered at the cafe table, lost in thoughts of choices and their fallout. Drawing those lines had exacted a toll. Shattered bonds, excluded family events. A relative I might never truly connect with. Yet it delivered rewards I cherished profoundly. Stability in finances I'd only dreamed of. Tranquility within my walls. Connections rooted in equal esteem rather than reliance on my wallet. And a self-value independent of my utility to anyone. I headed home with a calm ease. I prepared a solo meal and curled up for a film picked solely by my preferences. No input from others. My cell stayed silent, free of kin crises. Nobody sought my fixes for their messes or funding for their visions. For the first time as an adult, I existed for my own sake, unbound by others' nods of approval. Sure, loneliness crept in at times. Indeed, I yearned for those family moments, drama included. But this existence rang true, unlike anything from my past. Each act of autonomy, every serene evening, every solo choice, echoed the wisdom I'd gained. Real affection isn't about yielding your world to patch others' shortcomings. If this tale strikes a chord, keep in mind that drawing lines isn't self-centered. Often, the kindest support for your loved ones means declining to fuel their destructive patterns. You can cherish folks without bankrolling their ways. You can uplift them without vanishing into their needs. A genuine clan cheers your wins. It doesn't merely profit from them. I'm Laura Ashworth, 31, and I've at last discerned the gap between exploitation and true care. That insight claimed ties I believed unbreakable, but it gifted me an existence I never realized I merited. At times, the toughest lines to draw are with those nearest your heart, and those very lines unlock your liberty, serenity, and joy. Enjoy the tale. And from which spot are you tuning in? Drop by in the comments. If the story clicked for you, show some love with a super thanks to help me craft more like it. Grateful beyond words for your kind backing. Can't wait to hear your thoughts below. Check out the 2 fresh life tales on screen. I swear they're worth it. Tons more awaits on my channel. Hit subscribe, won't you? Catch you for the next real-life yarn. Warmest regards.